Hi students, happy morning to you all. Today we are going to discuss the very first chapter in history, which is the French Revolution. When you heard about the French Revolution, you will come to know the words which is liberty, equality and fraternity. Okay, let's start the session. In this, the learning objectives which we are going to discuss is about introduction, about revolution and what are all the causes, events in causes, 3 estates, political cause, economic cause and even subsistence crisis, tennis court oath, peasant revolt, storming of Bastille, bread riots and philosophical thinkers, then Jean-Jacques Rousseau, John Locke, Montesquieu, consequences, tennis court oath, National Assembly, what are all the changes happened in the National Assembly, political changes, social and economic changes, religious changes, okay, as well as Constitution, Age of Terror, Jacobins, Directory, Women's Revolution, Age of Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay, let's start the session with the introduction of French Revolution. Now, before getting into the lesson, first we have to know what is a revolution. A term revolution used to describe an aggressive overthrow of a government structure. Okay, usually represents a complete turnaround from one way of doing things to another way which is drastically opposite. So, in this lesson, okay, so they are going to be against, that means opposite to the monarch form of government. Monarch form of government. Okay. As I said, the French Revolution, the main keywords, important words which is important here is liberty, equality and fraternity. So the French Revolution started because it led to the end of monarch form of government in the France. So the king's rule to be brought down. Okay, to be brought down. Now, for example, here just see the picture. They are hosting the flag. That means they need freedom, they need liberty, they need equality against the king. Against the king, that means ruler, monarch. Okay. Just see this image. It was shown in your textbook also. Okay. It was storming of the Bastille. Storming of the Bastille. Let's see the story. What happened? Okay. French Revolution have started in 1789. The series of events started by the middle class shakes the upper classes. Okay, so it was started by the middle class people. The people revolted against the cruel regime of monarch. Cruel regime of monarch. What is regime here is? It is a system of government or particular administration. Okay, and the people revolted against the cruel regime of monarch. This revolution put forward the ideas of liberty. What does liberty mean? It is freedom. Fraternity mean a group of people with shared interest or aims. Okay. Equality, as you know, they need a equal right. So the revolution began on 14th July 1789 with the storming of the fortress prison, the Bastille. So the picture which is shown in your textbook is a fortress prison. The Bastille, the fortress prison, was hated by all because it stood for the despotic power of the king. Despotic means what? A person in power who acts cruelly. Okay. So it stood for despotic power of the king. So the fortress was demolished. This was the first step of French Revolution. Okay. Let's start with the first content, French society during the late 18th century. So in this we are going to see there are three causes, which is political cause, social cause and economic cause. Under this content we are going to discuss about the French society political causes. Okay, sorry, the society, the division of society of the French. Okay, so the first thing which we are going to discuss is about political cause. What is it? Political cause. Now, in 1774, Louis XVI, he was from Bourbon family of kings who ascended the throne of France. So, during 1774, he was a king. Okay, who was a king? Louis XVI. And he was 20 years old, only 20 years old, and he married to the Austrian princess who was Mary Antoinette. Mary Antoinette. So this was Louis XVI. This was Louis XVI. The period was 1754 to 1793. 1793. This was the picture of Louis XVI and Mary Antoinette. Louis XVI is in the left side and Mary Antoinette is in the right side. So the French monarchs ruled from 1775 to 1793. Okay. In 1774, as I said, Louis XVI was from Bourbon family and he ascended the throne of France. He was 20 years old and he married Austrian Princess Mary Antoinette, who always interfered with the administration. He ruled as an absolute monarch. What does absolute monarch mean? Absolute monarch in the sense it is full of the decision, all the decisions were taken only by the king, and he had maintained a huge army and built a big extravagant court at the immense palace of Versailles, which drained the wealth of France. Now, who was the new king here? New king found an empty treasury. When Louis XVI came to the power, the king found an empty treasury. Because why it is so is because they have spent more on the war. For example, under Louis XVI, France have helped 13 American colonies to gain their independence from the common enemy Britain. So that is the reason in that they have spent more. So the war have been added more than $1 billion livres. What does livres means? It is a unit of currency in France. Okay, and they have raised, it was risen to more than 2 billion livres. Lenders who gave the state credit, they started to begin to charge 10% interest on the loans. So the French government have obliged to spend an increased percentage of its budget on interest payment alone. So, to meet all these regular expenses, such as cost of maintaining an army, the court, running government offices or universities, the state was forced to increase the taxes. So, they need some money, no? The king has to have some money, okay, to run the government, to run the monarch form of government. So, what he have decided is to meet all these regular expenses, they started to force to increase the taxes. So this measure would not have sufficed in the sense it is not enough for the purpose. Okay, so 18th century have been divided into 3 estates and only the members of 3rd estate have to pay the taxes. So, the Society of Estates was part of feudal system that dated back to the Middle Ages. So, the term old regime means what I said, system of administration. It is usually to describe the society and institution of France before 1789. So, this old regime word will describe the society and institution which was before 1789. Okay. Now, from this, we are going to start with the second cause, which is known as social cause. In this social cause, the French society have been divided into 3 estates. How many? three estates. One is first estate, which belongs to clergy, second estate, which belongs to nobility, third estate, which belongs to big businessmen, merchants, court officials, lawyers, peasants and artisans, small peasants, landless laborers as well as servants. So the first estate were belong to group of persons involved in church matters. Okay. The second estate people were the persons who have high rank in state administration. That means it was government officials. Okay. Now peasants who were made about 90% of the population. So peasant population were higher. However, only small number of them have owned land they cultivated. Okay, 60% of the land was owned by nobles, the church and other richer members of the third estate. The first two estates, that is clergy and nobility, they'll enjoy certain privileges by birth. Okay, by birth in the sense from starting, by birth itself they'll enjoy the privileges in the sense rights. Okay, the most important of these was exemption from paying taxes to the state. So the first and second estate people, as I said, they are enjoying their rights by birth. Okay, so the right which exempted paying taxes to the state. So they won't pay taxes to the states. Okay, the nobles further have enjoyed feudal privileges. Feudal privileges in the sense, some of the feudal in the sense it is government privileges. These includes, they have to extract from the peasants. Peasants were obliged to render services to the lord. For example, the peasants, that means the third estate people, has to render the service to the nobles, to work in his fields and houses, to serve in the army or to participate in building the roads. Okay, now the next one, the church will extract its share of taxes from the peasants, which is called as tithus. What is tithus is? A tax levied by the church comprising 1/10 of agricultural produce. So 1/10 of agricultural produce will be collected as a tax from the peasants by the church. And finally, all the members of the third estate, that means third estate people, had to pay the taxes to the state. These will include direct tax, which was called as taille. That means the tax to be paid directly to the state. And so many indirect taxes were also collected by the government, such as everyday consumption like salt or tobacco. So if they are using salt, they have to pay the taxes for it. Okay, then the burden of financing activities of the state through taxes was borne by the third estate alone. So the burden which that means they have to pay the taxes for the customary dues such as salt, cloth, bread and all. Okay, so here only the third estate people alone has to pay the taxes for all this. Okay, the next one is economic costs. What is it? Economic costs. How this economic crisis arrived? That means the struggle to survive is in your textbook. Okay, the population started to rise from 23 million in 1715 to 28 million in 1789. So, population of the France grew and so did the demand for the grains. There was a demand for the food grains. What will happen if there is a rise in population? Sure, the supply is not there, then it will lead to demand. Okay, so the gap between, so the price of the bread was the staple diet for them. So the price of the bread was the staple diet of the majority, rose rapidly. Okay, most of the workers employed as laborers in workshops whose owners fixed their wages. So whatever it is, however, how many hours they are working, that and all, none of their business. But they have fixed their wages for the laborers, those who are employed in the workshops. Okay, so but wages did not keep pace with the rise in prices. So there was a gap between the rich and poor widened. The gap between rich and poor have widened. This led to the subsistence crisis. What is subsistence crisis? An extreme situation where the basic means of livelihoods are endangered. Okay. Something that occurred frequently in France during the old regime is subsistence crisis. Subsistence crisis, because of the gap between poor and the rich have widened. Okay, so this was a period of scarcity of food grains. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. It is growing of middle classes. Then the peasants and workers started to participate in the revolts against the increasing taxes as well as food scarcity. Even if they are paying taxes, there was a food scarcity. Okay, but they have lacked the means and programs to carry out full scale measures. They cannot able to do it in a full scale measure because of a changes in the social and economic order. Okay. The emergence of social groups. In the 18th century, there was an emergence of social groups which is termed as middle class. They were belongs to third estate. Okay, they have earned their wealth through an expanding overseas trade and from the manufacture of goods such as woolen and silk textiles that were either exported or bought by the richer members in the society. Okay, and all of these were educated. So the middle class people were educated and they believed that no group in society should be privileged by birth. So no one should give rights from the birth. Okay, now rather than a person's social position must depend on his merit. So social position in the sense, if they are working as a lawyer, then the education in the society, okay, should depend on his merit. So these ideas were based on freedom and equal laws and also opportunities for all. So it was put forward by the philosophers John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Montesquieu. In the two treatises of Garment, Locke, that means John Locke, sought to refute the doctrine of the divine and absolute right the monarch. Absolute right of the monarch. Next, the Rousseau. Rousseau wrote book The Social Contract, which tells the government should be based on a contract between people and their representatives. And in The Spirit of Law, which was written by Montesquieu, it proposed a division of power. Division of power in the sense, it is legislative, executive and judiciary. Okay, this was proposed by Montesquieu. And the American Constitution and its guarantee of individual rights was an important example for the political thinkers in France. Okay, with this I'll conclude the lesson. I'll conclude the chapter content. Okay, let's discuss the another content in the next session. Thank you, children.